Are we
Okay.
live?
We are, well, we're in the private thing, but yes. Okay, so we're going to do a little bit more of an expansive audio test this time than usually because of what I want to start doing. So, I've been speaking. Your turn. Say some.
You've been speaking, and now it's my turn. So I'm speaking, and I can say I do not want to be served a Mick fucking cum shot.
Sure, why not? Okay, so we're going to do a little bit more of an expansive audio test this time than usually because of what I want to start doing. So, I've been speaking. Your turn. Say some.
You've been speaking, and now it's...
Okay, you sound fine, though I gotta turn my... I can't even turn my own volume up. Shit. I'll just have to deal with it. Okay, so... Now I'm gonna mute my mic, and you're gonna speak.
I'm speaking now.
And now I'm gonna mute you and speak. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 1, 2. Start aggressively typing something while I speak. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 1. Yes. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, you can stop. Okay, now let me take a listen.
Now.
And now I'm gonna mute you and mic, and you're gonna speak.
I am speaking.
Okay, your audio comes through fine. And now I'm gonna mute. Start aggressively typing something while I speak. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 1. Yes. Testing, testing, 1, 2. Great, it works fine. All right. I gotta move some stuff around. I'm gonna make it public now. We've put it off long enough. Okay, we're live.
We're live?
We're live. The world sees us.
Hell yeah. You know, I had a alternative name for this stream.
You waited a little bit too long for it.
I was gonna make it as a joke, but I have forgotten.
Nicely done.
Oh, I remember. I'm gonna wait for people to trickle in here.
This is gonna be awful, isn't it?
God, I hope not. Our regular Eodas is here. Hi, Eodas.
He texted me. He said he can only be here for a few minutes, but I do appreciate that you did join.
Look, it's our favorite customer, always.
That is true. That is a very good point.
Oh, shoot. I suppose I need to make my own announcements, don't I?
Suppose so.
Ark is here. Hello, Ark.
Okay.
Somebody says trickle, trickle. It's cute.
We already got 10 people, and I really don't want to dilly-dally because it is already past midnight Eastern time. So, I want to get started ASAP. I'm going to wait for the next time that YouTube updates the number of viewers, at which point we should be at about 15. Wilson, please mute when you're typing.
Oh, Christ's sake.
Yeah. We're going to have to be doing that throughout the stream. It's going to suck, but I'm going to have to as well, so... Because I chose not to switch out my keyboard this time. Probably a good thing I don't have stock investments, otherwise my birthday Friday would have been a lot worse. I do. I mean, not really. Aside from... I have a very small retirement account, and it's tied to the S&P 500. It has... I've tried not to pay too much attention to it lately. Okay. I'm ready when you are, Wilson, so whenever you're done with whatever it is that you're doing, we should get started. We should not dilly-dally unnecessarily. Welcome aboard, regular viewers. Eodas, Arc Reactor, what? And Occam.
Yeah, I do love the what? Who is
excellent username. What? One of my regulars.
I can't. Their fucking profile picture is something else.
I can't even tell what it is, but I like it. Or that is to say, what? Anyway.
Yeah, we've got some people here. Give me just 1 second. I got a brilliant intro for us.
Go, and I'm gonna. Do you want me to switch to the real shit business is happening screen?
Yeah, I would. All right.
Okay.
For the 14 people here.
We may begin.
For the 14 people here, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the gentles and ladymen, welcome to the April Fool's episode of Bathrobes and Boxers with your hosts, Joshua and Wilhelm. And right here, we're starting it fresh, cracking open a cold one, and we're going to get...
You could be a professional radio announcer.
But no, ladies and gentlemen,
also,
it's
my full name isn't Joshua, it's Yakov.
I know, I was deliberately taking some piss poor names. I called you Joshua. What the fuck is that?
And you're Wilhelm, apparently. The third.
Third of my name. PewDiePie Archives. PewDiePie Archives. Can we just
No, it's Pew Pew.
Please?
Pew Pew Archives. Like a gun.
Oh, Pew Pew Archives. I see. Welcome everyone who is here. I'm seeing some old faces. I'm seeing some new faces. But not to steal the thunder from Arken, but of course, ladies and gentlemen,
you had an
welcome
intro. I'm letting you do
as ever. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, as ever, welcome to the 6th installment. I didn't think that we would be streaming with such regularity. We haven't missed a day
yet. We're gonna at some point.
We have
not missed a day yet.
It is late. It is late, and for that we do sincerely apologize. We'll be entirely honest with you. Life has kind of gotten in the way here. Not to get too personable, but last stream, Jacob's car got stolen.
No, that was 2 streams
this
ago.
week,
I finally got it back.
He finally got it back, ladies and gentlemen. Piano. But in this stream, it was a rough combination of some severe weather for me and dealing with the fallouts therein, and then just trying to get on with my life, new rent and shit. Well, new place soon anyway. And then for Arken, it was just a matter of, hey, would you like to do everything everywhere all at once right now that you have a car back?
Yeah, do you want the entire family in the hospital right now?
Yeah, do you want...
Everything's
fine.
What
did you say your mother said about your dad's gallbladder? The doctor said they'd never seen something more rotten.
It was gangrenous. So
gangrenous, yeah.
Yes.
Not to also. Hello, Arken's parents. Thank you for watching. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate the feedback.
Mom.
Yeah, my mom doesn't watch this, so I mean, I'm just saying. I appreciate that y'all's do. But no, getting back onto it.
Let's get into the news.
Let's really get into the news because we've got a lot for y'all this evening.
And it's late,
we thought Signal,
and I don't want to keep you up too long.
Yeah, we're gonna see if we can shoot for a 2-hour stream, 3-hour maximum. We're not gonna be here, huh? We have some diving to hell into. No, we have some hell to be diving into.
That's later. Right now, let's talk about the hell we are currently living in.
Yeah, so this week, ladies and gentlemen, we thought Signal was the joke. Turns out we were the joke, and a lot more has happened since. I always like to, for stream title and ideas, to like come up with what newspapers would name our stream, and not just any newspapers. I mean like Simpsons type newspapers or Family Guy type newspapers would name our
Headless
current
body
episode.
Found in topless bar.
Yeah, something like that, or fucking alliterations. But for this episode, Jacob hit its head right on the nail. No war like a trade war. So there's going to be a lot of talking about trade tonight this evening. But if we have nothing else to waffle on about, without further ado, Arken, would you like to get right in to the news?
To the news. So, okay. This stream is going to be even more lopsided than most of them because our outline is about half tariffs and half everything else. We're going to do the everything else first, and then we're going to spend the back half of the stream talking about tariffs, trade, the stock market, or what used to be the stock market and is now just three very sad businessmen on the trading floor of the New York Stock Exchange. And then at the end, I'm going to try and inject a little bit of hopium into this and talk about the massive protests that happened over the weekend.
They've learned since the 2008 recession and have made all the windows on the New York Stock Exchange not able to be opened.
I did not know that.
What, you didn't know that they did that as an anti-suicide measure? So that stockbrokers wouldn't
I was
try
not
to
aware
jump
that they
out?
did that. I was not aware that they did that.
Oh god, it's a bit of dark humor. Let's just move right on past it.
Anyway, I'm going to start with the miscellaneous news, and then we're going to get to a little update on Signalgate and a couple elections that happened last week, and then we'll get to tariffs. So, right off the bat, starting with fun things. About a couple weeks ago, right after the previous stream, there was an incident with some of our troops that are stationed in Lithuania. So as far as I understand, there were 4 U.S. soldiers who were in some kind of an armored car, and it drowned. There was some accident. It went off the road into like a swamp or a bog of some kind, and it drowned, and the 4 soldiers inside died of, not having air. This is a pretty big deal. For context, Benghazi, the attack on Benghazi that caused Republicans to investigate Hillary Clinton for years, had the same casualty count, 4 American soldiers.
Let's keep this absolutely clear and in perspective, right? I used to have an individual in my life who I no longer considered a friend, who, when quote-unquote debating with my more liberal-minded friends over why Hillary lost and Benghazi brought up, they would get red in the face, mad. They'd go, I'm a prior serviceman, she just abandoned our troops, and you don't care about this and that. Guys, this happened. Trump was golfing. Trump was at Mar-a-Lago golfing with
For a
Saudi
championship.
princes. For a championship.
LIV
and he boasted he
championship.
won. And he boasted he won.
And
Where are the servicemen?
When asked about the this incident, he essentially went and said, "Oh, what? I didn't know that happened." There was a ceremony a few days ago to transfer their bodies from Lithuania back to the U.S. so they could be interned, presumably either in Arlington or in their hometowns, whatever it is that the procedure is.
Do you have their names? We should read out their names.
I don't, but I can find them.
Leave that as an exercise to the chat, and we'll make it a segment later. Let's continue.
I got it.
Oh, you do?
That was very quick Google search. So they were based with the Army's 3rd... They were based with the Army's 3rd Infantry Division of Fort Stewart, Georgia. They've been identified as Sergeant Jose Duenes Jr., 25, of Joliet, Illinois. Sergeant Edvin F. Franco, 25, of Glendale, California. Hey, I know that place. PFC, that's Private First Class, I think. Dante D. Titano, 21, of Dededo, Guam. And Staff Sergeant Troy S. Knutson Collins, 28, of Battle Creek, Michigan. They are all dead. And there was a ceremony to transfer their bodies back here from Lithuania. Trump did not attend. Instead, he was busy winning at golf, which is great for him, but I seem to remember a time, not very long ago, when any U.S. soldier dying overseas, even if it's not in combat, was a massive deal. And if a president failed to acknowledge it, failed to even be aware of the fact that one of the men who he is the commander-in-chief of died, that would have been a national scandal. And you probably haven't even heard about it because of all the other things we're about to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Training accident. Yeah, that's what it is. Next up, let's talk about immigration, not for too long. So this is an incident that I think might have actually happened before our last stream. Or no, the day after, March 26th. We streamed on March 25th. So the day after our last stream, a Turkish immigrant, a grad student at Tufts University, named Rumeysa Öztürk, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, was arrested and detained, and I want to find the video where she is being arrested, and you will see why in just a second. I thought I already had it, but apparently not. Here it is. Let me switch on my display capture. So a man in plain clothes approaches her and starts trying to grab her. She resists. Another man comes up, and a third. And I don't know how much of this the video shows. Yeah, it cuts off after a while. But there are 1, 2, 3. There are, according to an article I have from NBC Boston, it was a total of 7, here it is, 7 plainclothes agents came and arrested her. And this would not be worth mentioning, on its own. It's not that much different from what we've talked about before. But this got to something that Wilson and I started talking about when we were writing the outline for this live stream, and we were trying to think of another story that we'd heard about. This one is a Maryland father who was sent to El Salvador to the prison there by mistake, by an administrative mistake. This is not speculation. This is not a theory. This is the Trump administration openly admitting that they got him by accident and refusing to bring him home. Now, I'm not going to waffle about that for too long, but Wilson and I were trying to remember that case. And the following conversation took place. I said, "Oh, are you talking about the gay makeup artist?" He says, "No, it's a father of 2. I said, "Oh, is it that one person with the autism awareness tattoo?" He says, "No, not that one either." And then I had a thought. There are now so many of these cases that we have to list them off like episodes of The Simpsons, and we can't remember which one a particular bit is from. This is where we're at. There are people now being arrested at so many places in such quantities, so blatantly illegal, that we can't even remember individual people anymore. There's this misattributed quote from Stalin, misattributed but nonetheless poignant, that one death is a tragedy, but 1 million is a statistic. And this is often cited by pseudo-intellectuals, but now we are seeing this in practice. If it was only one of those people, if it was only this grad student, or only that father, or only that guy with the autism awareness tattoo, or only that makeup artist, that would be an atrocity. But now there's hundreds, if not thousands of them, and keeping track of them is quite literally impossible. I mean, the human mind just can't keep track of that many people. And this is where we've ended up. I need a drink.
Something to something. Yeah, take a sip while you do. My girlfriend and I have been rewatching Andor as of late, and we just got to the episode before the Aldani raid. And hearing Nemec's words of how authoritarian regimes hide behind 40 atrocities because it's just easier. Like, everything's happening so fast that it's difficult to keep up, and that's the point. Like, there's no time to breathe, there's no time to think, there's no time to take in. And with the news, as the news cycle as it is, you can't ever take time to sit back, to think and address. That's why we do these in 2-week periods. It's not because we're just waiting for the next big thing to happen. It's because we take 2 weeks to sit, to think, to discuss, to decompress, and then do it all over again. Nearly a day doesn't go by whenever, at the end of my work shift, I come back home and I play a game of Helldivers with Arken, and about the only thing that is on the lips of our conversation is either the objectives at hand, but most importantly and poignantly, whatever the fuck new atrocity happened. It's made this way, and it's important to remember that as we continue on with the overwhelming news. The vast quantity of atrocities that you are seeing are being manufactured by design because it's easier to hide behind 40 than it is to admit your wrongdoing in 1.
This is a principle I don't know if it's philosophy or what, but in thought, this is a thought experiment known as the bed of nails principle. The idea being, if you step on one nail, it will pierce your foot and it will be extraordinarily painful. But if you stand on a bed of nails, each at about the same height and length, it'll prickle. It won't be pleasant, but it won't pierce your foot because obviously there's a more stable surface for you to stand on, and no one nail can stand out as particularly painful
or dangerous. The weight is distributed.
Right. And this is nothing new. Every authoritarian regime does this. But I have to say, there are very few that do it as effectively as this one. I have said that the defining characteristic of the Trump regime is incompetence, and that is true. But there's one thing he's really good at, and it's controlling the news cycle. He can do it like no one else. I mean, Joseph Goebbels would blush and piss himself if he saw how effective this one man is at controlling information.
Speaking of Goebbels, real quick, just to add on to that point, and I think it's something that we overlook, in the Senate a few days ago, one of the speakers, I don't know who it was,
but
it was a big
congressman.
One of the Republican senators
is not a senator.
Yielded the floor. Shut up. I want to try to be specific here. One of the Republican senators ceded his time on the floor to his Democratic colleague, but he ceded it, closed his argument with a quote from Goebbels. And whenever the Democratic senator had the chance to speak, they were completely and utterly flabbergasted. They're saying, I can't even talk about what I need to talk about unless we address the fact that we are now quoting an infamous Nazi propagandist in the halls of our sacred democratic institutions. Like, it's an effective tactic because it works. And the only thing that you can really do is resist and endure. So let's keep that in mind as we continue out through this new cycle. Marie Le Pen, somebody who I actually used to like back when I was younger and dumber. I remember the days.
You should probably explain who she is.
I did that. Yeah. She is the daughter of, is it Jean Le Pen?
French Hitler.
Yeah, a very famous French far-right, let's be generous and say activist. She took up the head of the party, the French far-right party called the Front National. And for the longest time, she has been, let's call it, confined in an institution that she hates as one of the representatives of France in the EU Parliament. She is somebody who I actually used to like before I realized what her politics were. And I entirely used to like her for aesthetics. Do me a favor, chat. Do not look up Marie Le Pen MLP. Just don't. Don't do it. Anyway, moving swiftly on from that, she's in the news cycle. Why is she in the news cycle? She was convicted of embezzling European Union funding and is now barred from running for the French presidency. Wow.
For the record,
what a thought!
She is not in the EU Parliament anymore. She's not been since 2017. She is now a member of the Front National in the French National Assembly, their version of Congress, basically.
Well, no. If you don't know, France has a long history. I think going back 20, 30 years of any time that there is a far right movement boost, it happens in or around. Or the French government will try to structure the election cycles for the EU Parliament in and around those booms so that members of like the Front National will end up in the EU Parliament and not actually within the French legislature. It's a thing. It's a real tactic.
Very interesting. I didn't know that.
It's one of the tactics and ways of them trying to deal with like all the crazies who want them to leave the European Union. They try to get them elected into European Union offices where they will effectively have no power to actually get France to leave the European Union. The UK tried this once, getting Nigel fucking Farage as their member of European Parliament at one point, if you will recall, and then he went and founded UKIP, but that's a completely different story.
And Reform UK.
But yeah, and Reform UK. But yeah, moving swiftly on from Marie Le Pen actually being, invalidated from running for office in France, like normal countries do, when politicians get, let's say, convicted of massive white-collar crime. On to better news. Let's talk about broken records, and let's specifically talk about records held by segregationist shitbags, specifically by the ignominious name of Strom Thurmond, a name I was more than happy to completely and utterly resign to history. For those of you who don't know, Strom Thurmond was a segregationist, a Dixiecrat, who served the Senate, who served as a member of the Senate for, I think he was, for almost a century. He was back during Teddy Roosevelt was in office. There's this really funny story where Roosevelt thought it would be very funny. Teddy thought it would be very funny to invite Thurmond and a black activist.
Not Teddy, because Thurmond was born in 1902, so he would have been like 10 years old during Roosevelt's last unsuccessful election campaign. So
it was something. I thought it was Teddy. It must not have been.
I think it's Franklin.
FDR invited one of the Roosevelts, I guess it was Franklin, invited Thurmond and a black civil rights activist, or a black activist of some kind, to the White House to have a dinner, and Strom Thurmond sent one of the most racist letters that the country had ever seen, so much so that I think Roosevelt had it like preserved in the National Library as like an artifact of outdated racism. It's really funny. So what record did Strom Thurmond hold that was broken recently? The longest Senate filibuster, breaking Thurmond's record, going to 25 hours. Who broke this record? None other than New Jersey Senator Cory Booker, who, just not to play the race card, but he is African American. I think that's extremely funny. But beyond that, let's not talk about, how did he hold in his piss, or how did he hold in his shit, or was he wearing a male diaper? Like apparently every news media organization wants him to do. Let's talk about the fact that for 25 hours, Senator Booker stood on all 10 toes, stood on business in the hollow chambers of our democracy, and filibustered not any bill, but simply spoke at impassioned lengths, not going hysteric, not reading for a phone book, imploring the American people to give the Democratic Party the strength to rise up. Let's talk about that. Let's keep that in mind. Moving swiftly on from there, Arken, you got an election that you want to hear about? You want them to hear about?
Well, the election itself happened a while ago. I think it was one of the ones from the general election last year, but it doesn't really matter when it happened. The point is, there was an election relatively recently for the North Carolina Supreme Court. It was a very contested election where the Democratic candidate, Allison Riggs, funny name, but Allison Riggs won by less than 1,000, I think it was 650 votes. It's very, very tight, and this is an election with, about 1.5 million total votes. It was really, really, really close. Practically 50-50. But she did win, after a recount. This is still the information we have. Now, North Carolina has a board of elections. It's got 3 members, 2 white, 1 black, and I'm specifying that for a reason. 2 of the board's members, I will let the enterprising among you guess which, voted to throw out 65,000 ballots that's 100 times more than the margin of victory. 65,000 ballots worth, they're trying to throw it out. So the most recent piece of news, and the thing that I have I already have ads on, guys. Why do you have to do this to me? Okay, here it is. The article I have is this. So the North Carolina Supreme Court halted that decision. So it's very close. Here it is. The Democratic candidate leads by 734 votes in a race that had more than 1 million. It's very, very tight. So the latest piece of news, this is from just yesterday, I think. Yeah, April 7th, just yesterday. That the North Carolina Supreme Court halted the decision. So it hasn't gone through yet. But they are very actively trying to overturn this election. You want to know what a stolen election looks like, ladies and gentlemen? This is what a stolen election looks like. Democrats are on track to win one of the largest victories they've ever won next year. And they will probably still win even despite this kind of chicanery. But this is how Republicans will steal that election. This is how they will undermine the Democrats, and not really the Democrats. I don't give a damn about the Democrats. This is how they will undermine the people when they are losing. They probably won't be able to do it enough to fully stop a Democratic victory, but enough to undermine it. The same shady tactics that we saw in the South, primarily, but across the country as well, in the late 1800s and early 1900s to suppress the black vote. Between the end of the Civil War and the Great Depression, the Republicans were the party of power. I mean, they won almost every election, but not every. And the reason for that is not because there was a large, plurality of Americans who were supportive of Democrats and wanted a change of government. People were generally happy, or at least not too discontented, with Republican rule. The reason that every election was so close is because it was an election only for white people, for the most part. Black voters essentially didn't get a say. And for the brief period before Jim Crow, when they did get a say, Republicans won every election. Just flat out. Then in 1876, there was a very heavily contested election, contested in part because Southern Democrats tried to suppress the black vote, including several large massacres of black voters, to instill fear in the black community and the black population. And that was the election. I don't want to get too much into history, but that was the election that ended up leading to the end of Reconstruction, because the Democrats essentially said, okay, you guys can have the presidency, but you have to remove troops from the South. And that is how we got no black people in Congress for a century. Almost a century. 90 years. We are heading there again. Now, there have not been any massacres of voters yet, but this kind of chicanery, this kind of suppression, this is not a slur, this is actual political terminology. This kind of rat fucking, I swear I'm not making that up, that is a real political term. This kind of rat fucking is what has gotten us to where we are, and it is what will keep us there if we do not call it out and fight it by every available means. Because 734 votes is a very, very small majority. It's not exactly a decisive mandate. But you know what? There has to be a cutoff somewhere, and most democracies seem to have figured out that cutoff is somewhere around 50%. She won. Fair and square, recount and everything. But no. That's the last of our quick news. We are at...
I'll be entirely honest with you. I didn't think you were going to talk about that. I thought you were going to talk about the Wisconsin Supreme Court race.
No, that's later.
The plus 15 Republican.
That's for later.
Oh, okay. All right. We'll talk about that later.
We're talking about Signalgate.
All right, so let's talk about Signalgate, ladies and gentlemen. So I'll do a real quick recap, and I'll let you get into it. So for those of you who didn't know, 2 weeks ago, or thereabouts, Pete Hegseth, in all of his glory and idiocy, probably mistakenly invited the chief editor of the Washington...
It was Mike Waltz, the National Security Advisor.
I'm sorry, Mike Waltz, in all of his intelligence, or lack thereof, accidentally invited the chief editor to the Washington Post to a Signal group chat where war plans of a very sensitive nature involving the bombing of the terrorist organization, the Houthis in Yemen, who, to my understanding, we wanted to bomb because they were threatening American shipping.
Yeah.
But the why doesn't matter in so much as for whatever reason we decided to bomb them, and we decided to discuss it over a allegedly secure peer-to-peer encrypted group chat that you can download on your phones. And I think last stream I quite succinctly described it as our military strategy decorum had devolved to the level of high school drug peddlers.
Yes, you did.
But yes, we have some updates. So I will let my illustrious co-host and main owner of the channel take it from there. Ooh.
Okay, so the story had just broken. I think it happened on like March 23rd or 24th, and our last stream was on March 25th, so we really only had the immediate news. Things have happened since then. So, as usual,
the big game of pass the blame, I call it.
Yeah, so, exactly. So the Trump administration has been backpedaling on this and obfuscating and trying to make this seem not as bad as it is. Their latest line of attack is that they weren't sharing war plans over Signal, they were sharing attack plans. I didn't lose, I merely failed to win. So that has been their line of defense. And their other line of defense has been, I don't even know how that journalist got in there. To which The Atlantic, being awesome, published another article with all of the screenshots from the Signal group chat, including two very important pieces of information. First of all, the one that showed that Mike Waltz added him, which very quickly killed any of the whole, I have no idea how he got in there thing. He got in there because you put him there, idiot. And that's funny, but there's something more serious and more important here. Part of Project 2025's agenda, very explicitly stated in the document, is that government officials should use encrypted messaging apps like Signal, like WhatsApp, with disappearing messages to skirt government transparency laws that require high-level conversations about, the military and other important government policies to be done with recordings on, so that if there's something untoward happening, then a court of law can peruse those documents, those records, and figure out what happened. This is how we learned the whole truth about Watergate in the end, and so many other government scandals since then. So on top of all of this being a massive threat to national security, I think we're kind of missing the forest for the trees. Yes, and this is something I missed last time as well, which is why I want to bring it up. So yes, this is a massive threat to our national security that attack plans, are being discussed on Signal, a app I use to message my friends. That is a danger to national security, but that's not the biggest danger that there is here. Much more dangerous to me is that there's a reason they're using it. They're not just stupid. They are. I mean, adding an Atlantic journalist, really stupid. But they're also evil, and we should not forget about that. The reason they are using Signal is for those disappearing messages, is so that when they do something illegal, which they have already done, and they are planning to do more, there will be no public record of it. And so, at the end of the day, all we can do is hearsay and our own investigations. Some of them brought about by Mike Waltz.
I want to expand on one particular point, right? It is a stroke of luck and genius that we were even informed that this was a thing. A complete fluke. And war plans, I'm not going to call them attack plans because they were war plans. They bombed the Houthis to the minute. as far as the gentleman editor was able to track, right? So there were definitely war plans. The administration is trying to hide behind 40 atrocities rather than one. I've said it before. I will continue to say it. So here's the thing that I don't want to just repeat the old same tired line, beat the old said dead horse with the same stick. But here's the point that I want to drive through. They could so easily obfuscate this, and they have to a pretty good degree. So then, what about the messages that we aren't seeing? They're using this in order to not adhere to any transparency laws, right? So what about the plans that we don't get to see? What about the plans that actually have a decorum of operational security to them? Hmm? What about the atrocities that they're actually trying to hide rather than the slop that we get served every day?
Remember, in I want to say 70, maybe 71, in the early 70s, we had a whole bombing campaign in Cambodia that no one even knew about. Now, granted, it was on the other side of the world, in the jungle, in a time before the internet, and with practically no news crews in the area. That kind of thing would be a lot harder to do now. In fact, practically impossible. Mm-hmm. But as much as that degree of cover-up is not possible anymore, I think, there are other less overt things. It's really hard to hide bombs dropping on cities, nowadays anyway, but theft, robbery, murder on a small scale, say a plainclothes ICE agent taking someone off the street, taking them to a processing facility in Yena, Louisiana, and torturing them until they're dead. That kind of thing, has happened. I mean, it just has. We just have to accept the fact that that has already happened. They have taken thousands, if not tens of thousands, of people into custody. We know that several of them, at least, the ones we know about, have been tortured by means of not being allowed to take their medications, being deprived of food and water, standard terrorist things, because we are a terrorist state now.
Or at the very least, we are ruled by a terrorist organization.
That is what we know about. What do we not know about? What bodies are hidden from public view?
These are the thoughts that keep me up at night. It is the fear of the unknown is what truly worries me. Not what's served on MSNBC, not the fucking slop of Fox News, not even what commentators that I actually have either personally met or trusted to retweet or talk about in their podcasts or their videos. It's what we don't see. It's what their actions incline us to believe the things that they are doing. It is for the unreported deaths. It is for the atrocities that are too rich for authoritarians to stomach in the daylight, so they hide it in the light of the moon, where it won't be as easily seen.
There's a line from the, I think, Secretary of Defense at the time, Donald Rumsfeld. Now, he's a war criminal and a horrible person, but he is very intelligent. Unlike the current criminal Secretary of Defense. And
we're talking...
there's a line he has from 2002 during the lead up to the Iraq War, which was not a justified war, or a very well carried out war. But nonetheless, this line does stand out in my head, and I think about it a lot. Reports that say, I'm reading this off Wikipedia, there's a clip, but I'd rather read it. Reports that say something hasn't happened are always interesting to me, because as we know, there are known knowns. There are things we know we know. We also know there are known unknowns. That is to say, we know there are some things we do not know. But then there are also unknown unknowns, the ones we don't know that we don't know. And if one looks throughout the history of our countries and other free countries, it is the latter category that tends to be the difficult one. And it is significant that we're still talking about this 23 years later, that this even has an academic name now, the Awareness Understanding Matrix. Because as evil and incompetent as that administration was, they were onto something, or he was in that one moment anyway. There are things we know that we know. We know that Donald Trump is corrupt and self-serving. We know that Elon Musk and his so-called Department of Government Efficiency is robbing the American people blind. We know that we are extrajudicially bombing people outside of this country, and have been for a long time. Even if we consider those bombings to be justified, we must, as I do, we must remember the fact that Congress never approved any of that. And, of course, they don't approve most military actions nowadays, but that is a problem, and now we're seeing why. We know that the economy is collapsing. We know that we are sliding into fascism. These are known knowns. There are known unknowns. We do not know how many people are in prison or dead in El Salvador. We do not know how many people are detained or dead here. We do not know how they are planning to enforce this further. We don't know what kind of lists they might have. These are known unknowns. And then there are the unknown unknowns. Nobody had any concept that the government was organizing military airstrikes through Signal until they themselves revealed it through their incompetence. And that became a known known. But until then, we didn't know that we didn't know that. That's what scares me with this administration. Mm-hmm. I don't know if, like, for instance, I've seen all over the heat map for takes about why he's doing the tariffs, which we're going to get to, as chaotically as he has. Is it because he genuinely believes in them? That's the most likely answer. He's been advocating them since the 80s. That's pretty much his most consistent position, actually. But is it because he genuinely believes in them? Is it because he's an idiot? Well, yes. Is it, perhaps, because he wants companies and countries to come crawling to him on their knees so he can gain leverage and give them favorable deals and exemptions if they bend the knee? We don't know that. We don't know that we don't know that. Maybe. Probably not. I don't think he's that competent. But the people behind him? Sure. It's entirely possible. But we don't know that we don't know that. Mm-hmm. And that scares me.
There is a very, very poignant message that I am cooking on for right now about these unknown unknowns. But I think we'll have to let it ride until we get to the tariffs. So let's talk about these special elections now. Let's move on to the next subject. Mark, look at the time.
It's, we're at 48 minutes.
48 minutes. Wow,
we're zooming
through these, huh?
We might actually make it in 2 hours. Anyway, there were a series of elections last Tuesday, actually, exactly a week ago. There were a series of special elections. There was going to be one in New York, but Trump withdrew Elise Stefanik, a representative from New York, as the UN ambassador for fear that she might lose her seat, which she won by 21 points or so, in a special election. That might have actually been one of his smarter moves lately, because on April 1st, there were 2 elections for Congress in Florida. One of them was for Matt Gaetz' seat, which is now vacant since he resigned in order to get the Attorney General job, which he ended up resigning from that as well, from the nomination. So they had to pick a congressman for that seat, the 1st District of Florida, and they had to pick one for the one that was formerly occupied by Mike Waltz, the National Security Advisor that we were talking about before. He is from Florida's 6th District. Now, both went for Trump and for their respective Republican congressmen by somewhere between 65 and 70%, which is massive, ruby red. districts.
Mm-hmm.
There were hopes that Democrats could actually win these districts. Those hopes were dashed. Neither Democratic candidate won. However, they did not lose with 30% of the vote. They lost with 45% of the vote. There was a swing of somewhere between 10 and 15 points, depending on which district you're talking about, of the Republican vote. It is now competitive. I mean, for a comparison, what's my district? Let's find out. Just for like a comparison, I live in San Diego, which is very heavily blue. So in 2024, in my congressional district, Kamala Harris won 60%. Adam Schiff, our senator, won also 60%. And Sarah Jacobs, our incumbent congressperson, also won by almost 61%. It's pretty deep blue. These districts were even deeper red, and yet they almost lost. This is a fascinating indicator for the future. Now, special elections are not representative. We know this. Data from before has shown us this before. But, theoretically, I saw this. If this swing from red to blue were applied nationally, Democrats would win 320 seats out of 435 possible seats in Congress, which would be better than they had at any point during FDR. Or maybe at the I don't remember exactly, maybe at the start of his term, but any time since the 1940s. Again, that swing will not be applied nationally, of course. It will not be 320. But something like 280? Possible. I'm sure I will be made a fool of in a year and a half when it's like some timid 230. But there's a possibility there that is very encouraging. And on the same day, we had something even more encouraging. We had a Supreme Court election in Wisconsin. Very tightly contested race. Elon Musk was handing out massive checks to voters to go and vote for the Republican candidate, which is flagrantly illegal, but we don't live in a nation of laws anymore, so it doesn't matter. Despite that, the Democratic candidate Susan Crawford won with 55% of the vote, and given that this is Wisconsin, one of the purplest states in the country, that's pretty large. And another interesting statistic, the capital of Wisconsin, and one of their largest cities, Madison, had about 1,000 more people voting in it in this election, in an off-year special judicial election, than did in 2024 in the national general presidential election. There is hope for us. For us, I'm not even going to say Democrats, for us anti-Trumpers. I'm not a Democrat, and I'm an independent. And until I decide to run for office, I will probably remain one. But for those of us who oppose this regime, there is hope. And we will get back to that hope in a little bit. First...
Right after these messages, no.
Yeah, right after these tariffs. Let's talk about tariffs.
Oh boy.
We are at 53.5 minutes.
We are having a wonderful time, although this one's about to eat all of it, because it is massive. So,
yes, it is. I'm letting you do this. Your turn.
So, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a minute and let's reobserve, reevaluate the situation as to what tariffs are one more time, because it is always helpful to revisit information, especially before a test. And believe you me, talking about these things sometimes feels like a test. Perhaps not an academic one, more a mental one, but here we go. So, tariffs are taxes on imported goods. The idea behind them is that if you have a foreign company that is flooding your market with very cheap goods, you can put a tax, an import duty on those goods to make them competitive or comparable to local goods, sometimes to the effect of making locally produced goods cheaper so that you will not destroy businesses at home. Sometimes this is good, especially if you are worried about preserving local jobs and the local economy, right? Because sometimes it's not just about cheap access to goods. Sometimes it's about making your people richer, actually caring about your constituents, right? There is a wonderful argument to be had about the place of tariffs. There is a wonderful argument to be had as to the glory, in my opinion, of free trade. Then there is also an argument to be had about local economics, the supply and demand scale and model, the requirement of labor, and all those things. I am not an economy major. I'm not going to sit here and engage with that in you. What I am going to sit here and tell you is that a shitload of random tariffs was presented to us one fateful Wednesday afternoon after the markets closed on a billboard with a presidential seal of approval on them. And oh boy, this was April the 2nd. They called it Liberation Day, putting tariffs on every country in the world. Smoot Hawley has nothing.
Except.
I'm sorry. Except, this is a good cut. Except.
This is important.
Was it Israel, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia?
No, all of those are tariffed. I'll talk about Israel, actually. This is really funny. We'll get to that. Russia, Belarus, and North Korea are best friends. We're not tariffed. At all.
How wonderful.
I mean, it's not that we have a lot of imports or exports to or from Belarus or North Korea, but still.
So, let's talk about these tariffs real quick. And before we really dive into them, I want to explain this idea of trade deficits with countries. And I'm not going to sit here and go like, oh, trade deficits are actually a good thing. Because I'm not an economist. It's telling what is good or is not good for you and how you should spend your dollar is like somebody giving you unlicensed legal advice. Stop it! You're not an economist. You don't know. Right? Trade deficits exist because foreign countries have goods that we rich Americans want to buy. The goods that we produce sometimes are simply too expensive or don't meet the needs of foreign countries. Real quick, just to provide an excellent example, hey Arken, on that giant list, can you tell me what tariff we labeled on Botswana? Random African country off the top of my head.
38%.
Why?
I'm going to post this in the chat. This is a BBC article that comprehensively lists very well and very nice. I love the BBC. They do stuff like this. A nice graphic of all the countries, and you can, unlike the stupid list that the White House put out, this one's actually alphabetical. So,
yeah, but Botswana, a 38% tariff on goods coming from Botswana. Why? What does Botswana export? I believe they're in the coffee belt. They export mostly
diamonds.
No,
they're way too far south for coffee.
I'm sorry. My African geography is not as good as it could be.
It shares the border with South Africa. So
okay, so diamonds, fossil fuels, luxury goods. Okay, what random citizen in a diamond mine is going to want to buy a Subaru manufactured in Mobile, Alabama? They don't have the money.
Pretty sure.
Here's another one. Do what?
I think Subaru's Japanese, but Ford.
Subaru is an American company, funnily enough. At the very least, they manufacture cars in the United States. There's a big Subaru plant in Alabama. There's also one in Indiana.
I didn't know that.
For whatever reason. But yeah, no, but we want Botswanan diamonds. We want Botswanan fossil fuels. That's why there's a trade deficit. China is the biggest one and is the easiest example, so I'm never going to go to that. So let's go to another country, Colombia. Hey, Arken.
Hang on.
What's the tariff rate on Colombia?
Shut up, let me check. It is this one. Colombia's easy. So the baseline tariff. This is important to mention too. The lowest tariff that we are imposing on anybody is 10%. So Colombia is the lowest. Colombia is at that floor, but it's 10%. If you're thinking about coffee, a more interesting one would be where is it? I have to find it on this list. I'm trying to find Malaysia.
Malaysia or Thailand,
Indonesia.
or Indonesia. Yeah.
Let me find Indonesia then, because I can't find
Malaysia
Malaysia for some reason. Indonesia, 32%. 32%.
Now, there might be some Indonesians who might be wealthy enough to purchase a Ford F-150 manufactured in Texas. But I also guarantee
I think the rich Indonesians have more taste.
Yeah, to be fair. But a car manufactured in the United States. I'm certain there is an Indonesian businessman who would want to purchase American steel. I guess, maybe. Although China is literally right there. But I'm certain there's some American good that we could probably think of that Indonesians would like to buy. But here's the kicker. As an American, I can tell you what I would want to buy from Indonesia. Cheap clothes. Coffee. Local food. I can think of specific examples. Whereas I'm guessing. Here's the thing. America is the world's shopping mall. Where other countries, and this one's more important, other cultures are put on display behind nice, neat glass panels, stacked on shelves, made to look pretty, to show off. For kids to go, whoa, that looks way cooler than Skibbity Toilet. I like that. Or whatever new hot brain rot is, right? But the American politicians don't see it as that way. They see it as the patriotic thing to do. Right? Literally, Liberation Day.
Who are we being liberated from?
We're being liberated from our ability to purchase cheap consumer goods. It's being spun. Our inability to maintain a decent cost of living in an ever inflationary market is being stabbed at the heart by billionaires who want us to own nothing and buy everything from them. That's what is happening. Remember, Smoot-Hawley tariffs caused the Great Depression. They came in the 30s. They ended the Roaring 20s. Well, they were the reaction to the stock market crash in 29.
And they were about 6% lower overall than these current tariffs. So
now, having somebody who's related to me who actually lived through the Great Depression, I can tell you that the depression that we are about to live through, because it's no longer a question of if, it's a question of when, and when is yesterday, right?
Actually, the answer is, I'll tell you when. The answer is an hour and 25 minutes ago when the tariffs formally went into effect.
Yeah, there you go. Ladies and gentlemen, as somebody who is, like I said, related to somebody directly who went through the Great Depression,
who's still
the
alive.
Ingredients, who's still alive, God bless him, I love him, had lunch with him today. My sister made an excellent sourdough loaf. I'm going to dap her up a little bit. But anyway, the specific meteorological ingredients that exacerbated the Great Depression are not present yet. Climate change is definitely going to exacerbate, but we're not seeing a Great Dust Bowl 2.0 which just took the instability that was created by the market crash and then the inability to recover from Smoot-Hawley and turned it into wide-scale poverty. We don't see that yet, right? But a decade is long, like a snake, and it winds through the course of history. So who knows if we can see the head or if we can see the tail. All we can see is the snake. We know not where reach is, but we can know when one is near. Right? And bringing up the meteorological part of it makes me want to rant about all the local fucking tornadoes that I've been having to deal with, but I will spare the audience of that tirade.
We have more. Oh god, we have so much more. We've
So,
barely gotten started.
Oh yes. So to finish this point, to stop waffling, tariffs, sometimes a good idea. Best debated by people with degrees who are dedicated men and women who study this shit like a science rather than the Wiccan witches who are up in the White House practicing their black magic voodoo on the market. Right? So moving from that, let's consider a few more things. Tariffs on China, 20%. How odd,
Nope,
it's not even one of the highest on the list.
You're misreading the note. It's 20% on the EU, 34% on China, 32% on Taiwan, 24% on Japan, and Canada and Mexico aren't listed here because we have separate tariffs on them now.
Madness. These tariffs make no sense. And as far as we can tell, they're not even the actual tariffs. They say that the tariff rate for China is 34%. In reality, what did you say it is? 7.3?
So
no, I'm sorry.
I'm
sorry. This is a part of the reciprocal tariffs.
I want to talk about
the
this.
Reciprocal
I want to harp on this. So, according to the White House, the tariffs that are charged to the U.S. by China are 67%. The tariffs charged by the EU to the USA are 39%. That is what the White House alleges in this ridiculous announcement. Here are the actual numbers, according to the World Trade Organization, which, forgive me for believing a little bit more than President Trump. China's tariff rate on goods imported from the US is 7.3. EU's is 5.2. We know that what the White House is saying is objectively bullshit. So, there has risen a question in the last week of where the hell are we getting these numbers from, because these are not the tariffs they're charging us. Journalists and economists and mathematicians have made their guess, and I think it's a pretty good guess. The calculation we have for the tariffs that are supposedly being charged to us by other countries are not based on what they're actually charging us in import taxes. It's based on the aforementioned trade deficit. A trade deficit, which very simply means we buy more from them than they buy from us. It could also be called an import surplus. Well, surplus sounds nice, doesn't it? Sounds fun. Sounds like economic prosperity, which it is. But we call it a trade deficit. Wilson was being cagey and not wanting to say if a trade deficit is bad or not, so I'll say it. No, it's not. Unless you are a small country and your trade deficit is with one very large country, preferably one near you. So for instance, if say Vietnam had a massive trade deficit with China, yeah, that would be dangerous for them, because then China threatens their national security. But our trade deficit is with the world, and the world cannot afford to stop selling to us to manipulate us anyway, because then their own economies would crash, because the whole world economy is based on the US. We won politics, geopolitics at least. We won the planet. We have been ruling the world, essentially.
Through our dollar. Through our dollar and our spending power. This is the point. And here's the thing that I wanted to bring up earlier, that I said I was going to let cook until we talked about tariffs. Guys, this was on purpose. This was on purpose. We did this. We wanted the world to be reliant on our dollar. We wanted the world to constantly have Americans be buying their goods, to intertwine ourselves with the world. This was intentional. This was intentional. It was part of the post-World War II restructuring of the New World Order. There are so many international treaties and pacts that I can think of off the top of my head. I do not know their name. I'm certain Arken could pull them up in an instant. We wanted this. We wanted these trade surpluses, trade deficits with the world so that we could be the world police, so that we could have a matter of leverage in other world's markets, so that we could show everyone how great it is for free trade, how they could have cheap American goods and we could have cheap foreign goods circulating through our markets, building the world together over a bridge of dollars. And we have billionaire ingrates like Trump and Musk trying to tear it all down because all they see is dollars flowing out of what I can only assume is a comically large Mario pipe into what they would perceive as an ocean, rather than their own pocket books. What's good for you and good for me is not good for them, folks. If you haven't gotten that picture yet, I'm sorry, you're in a cult or delusional. We wanted this. It is the height of American hypocrisy. And I say this as a proud flag-waving American. It is the pinnacle of American hypocrisy to say some dumb shit like, I just don't think the world appreciates us. Oh, you need a pat on the back? You need a gold star? You little snowflake? You need affirmations? Go to your friends. Go to your fucking therapist.
You know what's funny about this? We do get affirmations. We get them all the time. While we're busy stabbing NATO and Europe in the back, those 4 soldiers who died in Lithuania, who we started this stream talking about, those soldiers got a send-off, when they were being transported to the USA, and a big crowd of Lithuanians, just ordinary Lithuanian people, mothers, grandmothers, workers, ordinary people, turned out and waved Lithuanian and American flags together in solidarity with their fallen allies. The world loves us.
Those 4 soldiers could see that. If those 4 soldiers could see that, I could not imagine the immense gratitude they would have that their deaths are at least being honored by somebody, if not their own fucking government.
So here's the thing. The world loves us. I might have brought this up in a previous stream, but there's a Pew Research Center poll that I like to look at from time to time, which talks about the actual. Let me actually find it.
While he's finding it, a great example.
How the world sees us. Here it is. Wait, I got it.
You got it. Okay.
Okay. So here it is. I'm gonna actually. I think I have shown this before, but I'm gonna stream this. So. International views of the U.S. Percentage of people have a favorable or unfavorable opinion of the U.S. So, in Europe, the only countries with a percentage unfavorable higher than favorable are, only Greece and France, and both of those only by a couple digits. In Asia, the only countries with largely negative views of us are Singapore, Australia, funny enough, and Malaysia. In the Middle East, Turkey and Tunisia very much don't like us. In Africa, everywhere across the map loves us. Ghana, Kenya, Nigeria, and South Africa are all, as with the exception of South Africa, are all 70+% favorable. South Africa is at 49% with 31 unfavorable. And in South America, hang on, I'm not done. In South America, which we have been screwing for decades, if not centuries, whose governments we have overthrown who knows how many times. The lowest number here is in Mexico, and this is from 2024. So this is after Trump #1.
Yeah.
In Mexico, they have a 33% unfavorability and 61% favorability. After everything, the world adores us. And you know what? Who can blame them? We have done really bad things in the past, but by and large, Like Wilson said, we built a bridge to the world with our dollars, and the world has also prospered. They have been very grateful to us, as well they damn well should be. And they have been.
I want to point out that bridge of dollars, if we want to continue the metaphor, sure, the pavement may be the good old greenbacks, but if you look closely everywhere, you can find everything from the yen to the kroner and everything in between.
That's true.
But real quick, while you have that thing up, there's a really talking about how much the world seems to love us. What's Kosovo's opinion of us?
Kosovo has I know what you're getting at. Kosovo has a street named after Bill Clinton and a statue of Billiam Clinton sitting in their nation's capital because 30 years later, they still cannot stop thanking us for saving their asses from the Serbs.
Yep. They literally composed a song, and it's a banger. It was composed by Ahmed Miftari, who was famous for composing songs for the UÇK, or the Kosovo Liberation Army, right? Which, by all and large, is a terrorist organization, but they're like the IRA. They're based. I don't believe Arken considers that fully, but I do.
I can't say that because I want to have a career.
But I don't care, so we won't. But no, the song is literally
talk
called
about what I did on
St.
Patrick's Day.
The song's lyrics, it's a banger. It's great. We should play it at some point. But the start, thank you, USA. You are my best friend. You are the peacekeeper. You are the legend.
They called us
Who writes a song with such cheesy ass lyrics? Who was once a member of a terrorist organization and turns that shit into a banger?
I'll tell you who. Somebody who is extremely grateful.
But insert clip of J.D. Vance saying, I don't think I've ever actually heard you say thank you. Is saying thank you too hard? Bro. Getting back onto tariffs, right, which all of this has been... And the comedy of it, going directly from Zelensky's comedy of thank you, America, of exactly what he did after that fateful conference, and getting into the comedy of absurdity. Some of the places that were tariffed were the Heard and McDonald Islands, which we're not going to harp too much on, but I think is literally inhabited by penguins.
Yes, there's if you go on Wikipedia and it'll list population, it says 0.
Yeah. We slapped a massive fucking tariff on them. Like,
not too bad. It was like, I think it was the baseline 10%, but still a tariff. And this is significant. Not because it will ruin our all-encompassing trade with the Heard and McDonald Islands. I think we'll be fine without them, considering there's no one there.
It's significant because it has all of the hallmarks of these tariffs not actually being thought out by right-leaning economists, not by actual human brains, but by somebody asking ChatGPT, asking an AI software to write what would be the most effective tariffs for every country in the world. Every country and territory, probably. Have we entered the age where AI is now starting to write government policy? The Trump administration certainly thinks so. As our shadow president, who I guess has fallen by the wayside now, loves his AI. This absurd situation, this international fiasco, has led to one of the largest market crashes in American history. It's up there with the 2008 recession. It, on like its first day, got as bad as COVID hitting the market. And though it's rebounded a little bit today, on yesterday, on Tuesday, it's only going to go downhill from here.
Actually,
one thing
you must have missed
Hold
this. On. You must have missed this. This is important.
Oh?
It rebounded in the morning.
Aha!
It has not rebounded.
I remember this.
It has now swung 1,300 points south, eliminating the 1,000-point gain that there was in the morning, and we are now at a 300 or 400-point deficit again from the previous day.
And if I remember correctly,
because
that was posited by a rumor. That was posited by, or that happened because of a rumor that was posited from the White House about how there was going to be a 90-day pause on the tariffs that lasted until noon when the market spiked. And then the White House reconfirmed, no, there will be no 90-day tariffs. If that, ladies and gentlemen, if that's not a classic pump and dump scheme, I don't know what is.
What they announced, actually, what really got the market going earlier, what turned it to selling again and dropping, they announced a 104% tariff on China. Trump figured out that you can do a percentage above 100. It's over.
We're so over. I can't wait for my iPhone to cost 500% more. I can't wait for paying for the equivalent of 5 iPhones. Oh, plus tax. Specifically, local sales tax. That'll be great. It's awesome. It's like at 9% for where I live, right? So, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to a brief silence in this stream, mostly because the absurdity of the situation is washing over us like the briny waves of the ocean blue. And I'm not just saying that because I'm still on the whole penguin directive. I mean, what else is there to say?
I'll tell you what there is to say. There's more. There's more to talk about. This list is not.
There is always more.
So
we're not done yet, ladies and gentlemen.
I want to highlight another one of the absurdities that we can laugh at a little bit. Israel is one of the United States' most staunch allies. Whether you like that or not, that is the fact of the matter. Israel has been one of our most steadfast allies since the 1960s. And that
Shalom, goy.
That has led to a lot of really good things, a lot of really bad things. I'd say more good than bad, but a lot of really bad things too. However, now we have a 17% tariff on Israel, which doesn't seem that high compared to some of the others I've named, until you realize that both Iran and Afghanistan, now ruled by the Taliban, yes, that one, have only 10%, the minimum. Why is this? Presumably because we have a much higher trade deficit with Israel than with Iran or Afghanistan, because Israel is a high-tech economy that produces a lot of high-tech goods that we American consumers like to buy. So we buy more things from Israel than from our adversary in Iran or Afghanistan, and we are punishing them for that. This is the absurdity of this calculation that the White House has decided should be the basis of our trade policy.
Going back to my previous point, hopefully injecting a little bit of humor into it, there are plenty of Israelis who would absolutely adore to purchase a Dodge 1500 Ram truck manufactured in some godforsaken Rust Belt state. But as we all know, Israel's chief export is clearly Mossad agents, and those, my friends, do not come cheap.
Hey, I have one right now.
I made him laugh. I made him laugh.
I have one standing in the back of the room. If I need someone taken out, I just say, oi.
They tried to conjure up some Hebrew there.
A little bit. Oi, I need to have that taken care of.
Shut up. But anyway, yeah, no. Like, what kind of a clown world do we live in when we are taxing our supposed allies? Even ones whose, pardon the phrasing, whose dictators we are willing to get on all fours for and assume the position, like he did yesterday, right? But not do punitive tariffs against literal terrorist organizations.
Yeah.
That makes me curious. I wonder what Palestine's tariffs are, or if we even did any on.
I don't think... I'll check, but I don't think we have any. Let's see. It might be called Gaza. Gaza, nothing. It would probably be the Palestinian Authority, I guess. Nothing.
No. You heard it here, folks. Palestinians, you have a great opportunity to sell your products to the American public for absolutely no tariffs. Get to it. Kick Hamas out and start manufacturing iPhones. You'll get jobs and payment.
Well, like, I mean, I keep scrolling.
Until Israel
through
bombs the factory.
Look at this. 41% on Syria, 44% on Sri Lanka, and the BBC, good guy BBC, does not list the White House's ridiculous numbers that they are saying other countries are tariffing us. They're saying the share of U.S. imports. All of these countries are less than a percentage point of our imports. But because they're such small economies, Sri Lanka, Syria, small countries, small economy, they get 40+% tariffs.
We sell them a $100,000 truck and they only sell us $10,000 of spices, so Trump considers that a 90% trade deficit, so we need to tax them 90%.
Russia's off the hook too. Yeah, I see that. We talked about that.
We haven't been reading comments. Before we get to our next major point, I'd like us to take a small break to go through and read the comments. So please, I promise you that we are paying attention, but we'll get to that there. But there's a major point that we are about to get onto. We're now about to cover the congressional response, the Democratic response, and the sociological effects that all of this is creating, and the ones that the administration is trying to take advantage of. Would you like to take the lead on the congressional?
I'm going to take another sip, and then...
He's having a sip of a beverage, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, I'm finishing. How scandalous!
I am continuing my slide into alcoholism. Anyway, let's do this. So, for the first time in my life, Congress is trying to actually reassert its power to do anything. There are bills in both the House and Senate with Republican co-sponsors, or even Republican proponents originally. I'm not sure who suggested it in the first place, but large Republican support in both houses of Congress to reassert their power to set tariffs, which are a tax on the American people. We pay them. Other countries don't pay them. Our companies don't pay them. We pay them. So they are a tax, by definition, on the American people. The American Revolution was fought over tariffs, not income taxes. There was no income tax. Society and banking and the financial system was not advanced enough for income taxes, or even sales taxes, or property taxes. We had import taxes, tariffs. That is what we started a revolution over. If you read the Declaration of Independence, which you should, I do, at least once a year, you will see there that it says that it's all men are created equal, in this whole soliloquy about liberty. And then it lists, I think, 26 different reasons why we are now seceding from the British Empire. And one of them is unfair tariffs. Another, by the way, is not American citizens, there was no America to be a citizen of at the time, but Americans being imprisoned in foreign lands, which is something we've already talked about today. Two things that we are now actively doing as a country and proud of, apparently. Anyway, Congress is finally trying to reassert their power to set tariffs, which they themselves gave to the executive some time back. This is generally a very good thing. I've long been an advocate of legislative supremacy, They are in Article 1 for a reason. The order in which the three branches of government are established in the Constitution corresponds pretty well to the amount of power that they are supposed to have. There are no co-equal branches. The supreme branch of government is and has always been meant to be the legislature, which is the most direct representative of the people's will. Then the president, who executes, hence the executive, the people's will, and then the judiciary, which is meant as a check on the other two, but should not rule by itself, lest it become a form of tyranny in and of itself. Congress should reassert more power, in my opinion. They should reassert war powers, for instance. They should reassert a lot of different authorities. But this is, I think, a bit of a... I'm trying to think of the phrase. Not a diamond in the rough. It's a glimmer of hope in overwhelming darkness. If this bill passes, Trump says he'll veto it, there may or may not be the votes in the Senate and or House to... I think it's the Senate. I think if a president vetoes, it's the Senate that has to. So there may or may not be the votes in the Senate to overturn a veto. We can hope. But even if it fails, that this is happening and there are dedicated Republican senators on board with this is a good thing. That's the best news I have about this whole thing. There are three more things I want to talk about. Well, two and a half. First, I want to harp on the Democratic Party a little bit. My beloved Democratic Party, which tries so hard and fails even harder. The Democrats have for a long time been the party of free trade. And under that regime of free trade, the world and the United States has seen the greatest period of physical economic prosperity that we have ever had. However, there is a component of the Democratic Party, a very small one, mostly in the Rust Belt, which is holding on to this old-fashioned, sort of like 90s leftists. I mean, I don't think steel workers in Pennsylvania are really thinking about leftism very much, but it stems from old-timey leftist politics, this idea that foreign countries and companies are taking advantage of the American worker. And how are they doing that? They're taking the jobs none of us want and allowing us to do less back-breaking work. So the Democratic Party keeps talking about how Trump is destroying our retirements and our economy and blah, blah, blah. What they're not doing, the party itself anyway, is criticizing the tariffs directly. They refuse to say Trump's tariff tax is harming the American people. And I was actually curious about how many Democrats are supportive of tariffs. So I'll show you. This many. -84. Only 4% of Democrats view tariffs favorably. Only 23% of independents. Even Republicans, only 58%. Tariffs are not popular. They have never been popular. But especially now, they're super unpopular. And the Democratic Party has the opportunity to turn this into a very, very potent talking point for years. Trump's tariff tax. It's a good alliteration. Just keep saying that. And we will win in 2026, and we will win in 2028. Very large victory. If we are willing to speak like that, if we are willing to give up on the idea that 5 people in Pittsburgh should be deciding national policy when the vast majority of the country is correctly against this dangerous and destructive policy. Now, I mentioned the idea that they're taking our jobs and that they're allowing us to do less back-breaking labor. I want to talk about that. And I want to talk about this from a kind of a semi-academic sociological standpoint. this obsession with bringing back manufacturing jobs, something I've been hearing a lot, is that we're going to bring back real jobs and not these fake sissy email jobs that everybody has to do now. Now, there are jobs in this country and in most developed countries that are frankly bullshit jobs. There are simply too many so-called administrators and managers of human resources and other such nonsense. And public relations. Like, there really don't need to be that many administrators, HR managers, or public relations managers. That's true. However, economics is not purely based on extracting things from the ground and then turning them into other things. Value is not determined by labor, as Marxists would have it, and it's not even determined by scarcity, necessarily. It's pretty closely tied to it, but it's not determined by it. Value is subjective and is therefore determined by what we consider to be valuable. Why was the US dollar and so many other currencies backed by gold for such a long time? Gold isn't inherently valuable, it's pretty. But what makes it inherently valuable? You can't build with it. You can't make anything really of practical usage with it. You can't eat it. You can't use it to make food. You can't build with it. You can't even create weapons with it. Aside from, I'm assuming, small, internal parts, possibly. But no gun is made. No good firearm is made out of gun. Out of gun. No gun is made out of gun. Shut up. No good firearm is made out of gold. No good sword, or spear, or crossbow, or sling is made out of gold. Nothing really inherently valuable is made of gold. But we value it,
if I might,
because it's scarce and because we've decided it's valuable. Go ahead.
If I might. One of the greatest human achievements is and always will be the idea that money is not something that is inherently valuable, but is in fact the value from which goods, or the medium from which goods and services are exchanged. It is the goods and the services that have value, not the money itself. And if I might get onto a little bit of a sci-fi soapbox, there's a reason why I've always been confused as to why, like, postmodern and sci-fi settings, there's one game in particular that I can think of, Stellaris, favorite game of mine, ends up using, like, energy as, like, the basis for money. And the thought has just come to me here as Arken was doing a little bit of extrapolating. Money is value, is the medium of value. And the more that we digitize, the more that we throw off these ideas of money is something that we extract out of the ground, money is something of which we can just have, right? And the more digital that we become, it will be the bits that will be carrying the values. It will no longer be in paper money or checks. And sure, having that as a redundancy is pretty good, right? But it should be representative of value. And I see that the digitalization of money as an extremely interesting and good thing, and probably how those sci-fi settings would accrue energy as being a form of currency. For energy is inherently valuable, and if you are using a monetary system with value as the basis of, or perceived value, which is the really important part there, right? And then requiring a medium for that perceived value to be exchanged for, having energy in order to operate those automatic systems, it makes a lot of sense. Why did I do that? Well, it was an interesting extrapolation, kind of broke up a little bit of the argument, but more to the point here, it shows the psychology at work here, and the psychology of which the right will attempt to use to influence people to push their agenda, right? For a long time, I don't think it is particularly controversial to say that the right uses a lot of, they took our gerbs, we need to be real manly men again, we don't need to be these sissies again, this hyper-masculine bullcrap in order to push a particular message. And that message is always going to advance the values of somebody who will not share that message. It is a tool that is being used, this fantastical version of masculinity in which one has to do backbreaking physical work, is not to make you fitter or make you more healthier or make you be able to fight and die in a war at the whims of a totalitarian regime. It is to generate perceived value for a product so that you can feel as though your labor will be exchanged for something you consider valuable, that the billionaires and oligarchs will hope comes out of their hands in their slave factories from across the sea or from the factory that you work at. There was one time where we bucked this trend of wealth extraction through sociology, where sociology was used to actually better people's lives through manufacturing. And that was through the shitheel that was Henry Ford. Call him what you will. Call him an anti-Semite. Call him a beater of his children. He approached the idea of money and value and manufacturing and labor from the perspective of a man or woman should be able to buy the products they produce. They should be able to make enough money to actually buy the things they sell to people. If you work in food service, you should be able to afford enough money to buy the food that you make. If you work manufacturing a car, you should be able to afford the down payment on that automobile. That is a great trick of sociology that bends human psyches to greater understanding in their place between value and profit and their labor. It's not Marxist, it's not even capitalist. It is an entirely new idea of generating, or a new extrapolation of an old idea of how to get to this non-exploitative market. And it is the same trick of sociology. Real quick, I'm concluding here, I promise. And it is the same trick of sociology that will keep people enslaved to it. Now, the right, and specifically this administration, will continue to use on their brainwashed flock.
A component of value is labor, as Marxists would have it. Another component is scarcity. I mean, Wilson said energy is inherently valuable, and that's actually something I hadn't thought of. I said nothing is inherently valuable. It's not entirely true. Energy and food and water and housing are the only things I can think of that are inherently valuable, because they are some of the only things that we all need and cannot live without. Now, were there an abundance of any of those things, an overabundance, they would lose much of their value, because there would not be a scarcity. So scarcity does, to a degree, determine value. That is true. But a lot of it's subjective.
I would consider that scarcity determines quantitative value as opposed to a qualitative value.
Precisely. So, I mean, they're all components of value, but none of them explain it alone. What explains it is our own brains and what we choose to value. A Bible, to me, at best, is something I can put on my shelf. But if I were Christian, it would be the most valuable possession I have. If I were single, then Bitcoin would be of great value to me.
Wow!
I'm joking. I joke the Bitcoin traders a little bit. But really, if I were into all of this, cryptocurrency stuff, Bitcoin would be incredibly valuable to me. But I'm not. I believe money is money. So I think Bitcoin is utterly worthless, and its ups and downs have absolutely nothing to do with my life. It is not valuable to me because I do not see value in it. But someone else might. Someone else would see value in a particular book that I don't care for, or, I don't know, a particular video game that I'm not into. What was that one game that took the entire world by storm during COVID? Animal Crossing? Was that it?
Animal Crossing and Among Us were the two big ones.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the one with cute animals. That's Animal Crossing. So
that would be Animal Crossing.
That was one of the most popular video games in the world for a while. I never got it. Never was for me. But
same.
So to a lot of people, it was incredibly valuable. It helped them get through one of the darkest times of our history and of their lives. Value is subjective. And one of the big psychological and sociological tricks of the right is convincing men and women, to a lesser extent, that if they're not doing back-breaking physical work, then they're not producing any value. When I was writing this, I told Wilson a little story, and I want to tell it to you guys too. And bear with me here. Because what I wrote here is that this is a toddler's conception of work and value. So I want to tell you a story from when I was like 4 or 5 years old. So when I was a kid, when you're a child, you learn everything for the first time. Everything is new, everything is interesting, everything is surprising, and everything is confusing. So to me, I knew my parents go to work. I didn't really speak English at the time, so они едут на работу. They're driving to work. And I watched cartoons, Soviet cartoons, Russian cartoons, and American cartoons. I remember I watched a lot of, I think anyway, that I watched Bob the Builder. But one way or another, I watched some cartoon that had like a construction site as the place of work. And, it's a hard hat, a high visibility vest, and somebody's drilling something with a power drill. Usually the ground, for one reason or another. If you ever see like roads being repaired in your city, you'll see the same kind of scene. So in my mind, until I was like 6 or 7, maybe 8 years old, when my mom, an optometrist, and my dad, a electrical engineer at the time, now a software engineer, when they would go off to work in the morning, and then I would think, oh, they're at work. I imagine my mom, an optometrist, and my dad, a electrical engineer, wearing a hard hat and a high visibility vest, holding a power drill and drilling mindlessly at the ground. That was how I imagined work when I was like 4 years old. And I really think that is how a lot of people imagine work. I mean, not that they don't see any other kinds of work, because if you're an adult, you interact with other people doing other kinds of work all the time. But they don't see it as real work. They'll tell you like, oh, that's not a real job. And this is where it stems from. It is this...
Oh, excuse me.
Hyper-masculine idea, you're excused. There's this hyper-masculine idea that if you're not breaking your back making steel or something, or building stuff, then you're not
making enough money to live on.
And stuff like email jobs, as they're called, administrative jobs, engineering jobs, engineering that isn't civil engineering, of course, journalism, let's say, my field, software engineering even to a degree, is perceived as feminine. And we're never going to be able to escape this, I think. There are real differences between men and women, and that has been exacerbated and exaggerated by people who would take advantage of it for all of human existence, and that will probably continue until our species dies out. So there are certain professions that are seen as feminine, like nursing and teaching and any number of office jobs, and there are other jobs that are seen as masculine, which is exclusively physical work and maybe software engineering, maybe, and the military. The reason I am harping on this so much is because a big part of why Trump won last year was that he activated a lot of new voters, a lot of young men in their 20s and maybe early 30s who have never voted before, never really been politically involved, but were activated by men like Joe Rogan, or in the more extreme cases, Andrew Tate and his ilk. And they were convinced...
Other far-right commenters are available, like Steven Crowder or Ben Shapiro.
They're less prominent. I think Joe Rogan, mainly, was the one that really tipped the scale. I mean, he has a massive following. He's the biggest podcaster in the country for many years running. And he convinced people, and others like him, that whole ecosystem, convinced people that Kamala Harris, who is a woman, will make all of us effeminate, and will make all of us gay, because if you like women, you're gay. Now that's the rule. That's what the gods of masculinity have decreed. If you like women, you're gay. So I guess I'm gay. And she's gonna make us all work these sissy jobs, and she'll make us all losers. So we have to vote for Trump because he's a big, strong man. A strong man, if you will.
Daddy's coming home.
And this is the last thing that I want to say about tariffs. Good segue.
Mm-hmm.
The big talking point from Trump supporters for the last week has been, essentially, you will own nothing and be happy.
Now, where have we heard that before?
That's deliberate. Right-wing commentators have now decided that the correct angle of attack is... You don't need an iPhone. You don't need a new car. You don't need a desktop computer.
Don't worry about it. Don't be a... I think Trump put out a Truth Social post that was just like, what are you, a panicking? Are you a panicking?
I don't even know what that's supposed to mean. What's the...
Panic Republican, I think. Like, from the legendary brain that brought us Meatball Ron and Sleepy Joe Biden, we got... panicking.
From the legendary mind that brought us, everything is computer.
Yeah.
So their new narrative is you will own nothing and be happy. Now, there's all sorts of theories I could spin about how they're trying to deliberately make us poor so they can control us. Probably true, but not particularly relevant. The point is, this is going to be a test of a theory of politics that could best be described as post-materialism. And it essentially stems from the idea that real, material realities don't matter, and that everything is perception. I always say perception is reality, but that is only possible in our particular information environment and our ridiculous amount of wealth, where objective metrics don't actually affect our overall quality of life more than, slight adjustments for the better or worse. So this total economic collapse is going to be a decisive test for that theory. We're going to find out in a year's time whether voters see what is happening to their bank accounts and their retirements and their investments. And by the way, 2/3 of Americans have investments. It's not only for the rich. Almost every American has some kind of investment. I'm poor as shit. I have investments. One investment. It's the S&P 500. Blue chip stock. Never fails until now.
Huh.
Most Americans have investments. Most Americans have retirement accounts. Every American has finances of some kind. And this next election is going to be a test of whether or not post-materialism is real, and reality is totally decoupled from material reality, or if America is still driven by the dollar, if people will still vote against the person they perceive as making them poorer. Remains to be seen. Food for thought. I don't really have an answer here, but...
I don't really have a particular point.
This is something to consider, I think, as the economy worsens more and more and more and more over the next days and weeks and months.
Let's take a moment before we transition into our final point. That's, by the way, at an hour and 53 minutes. So I think we're going to be looking at a 2 hour, 30-minute, or probably less. I think let's look at some comments real quick.
It's been pretty quiet.
very quiet. We had a super chat way back by our good friend Eodas.
Yeah, we did.
Doing a pump and dump on the S&P 500, which, yeah, I'm going to shout him out if he watches us.
He might
Excuse
come
me.
back later.
Hopefully. Let's see. Somebody called Spaceboy Jacob saw your name
Oh, yeah.
in the Artor video.
Former classmate, apparently.
Really?
Yep.
Wild. Local tornadoes of Philo, Michigander, I see, lol. No, Adam the Spaghetti Fanatic. I am a proud Arkansan, and we had a pretty super 2 weeks recently where a city nearby mine got nearly obliterated. Not to mention there were several times where I was under some pretty significant tornado warnings. The one that actually was lethal plowed through a city called Cave City, killed 14 people, I want to say, and Sarah Suckaby did the sum total of fuck all, other than apparently maybe writing a letter to Trump begging for FEMA aid, which she's got to know is not going to come because he's been talking about defunding it. Because let's be real, the legislatures in Little Rock and other states all across the South and the deep red areas don't really care if natural disasters plow through areas that are lived in by Hispanics or blacks or any other thing that isn't a white Protestant community. But the instant that a tornado takes out their golfing course, suddenly we need $1 billion federal dollars to fix that. Moving on from there, our influence in the world has been waning since 2008. You could argue even before that. I would be inclined to agree, but when is a discussion for another time. Let's see. There was a real opportunity to be a force for good that has been flushed down the toilet. Yeah. Here we go. The most frustrating thing about the decline of American hegemony is that this is self-immolation and was completely unnecessary and enforced. The geopolitical situation only a few years ago was very much in favor to the United States, but so much for that. Yeah. What a complete and total betrayal indeed.
Interrupt you here, and there's for a reason. I have been thinking about what my next video is going to be. I haven't decided yet, but I have ideas. And one of them is a concept I have. I don't know if I'll stick with this title, but it's called the prosperity problem. I don't really like the name. I don't think it has a lot of appeal outside of nerd circles, and I do want it to actually reach more than a couple thousand people, so I'll think on that. But I've been gathering perspectives on this idea, and I found something earlier today, a quote from Fukuyama, I think in The End of History. I can't be bothered to check right now, where he talks about the idea that people might fight against prosperity because they just want to fight. So I don't want to read this. And you might hear it again in that video.
You do that. I am going to use the bathroom really quickly.
Have fun with that. Have fun with that. So, this is, I think this is from The End of History. So, he writes that experience suggests that if men cannot struggle on behalf of a just cause, because that just cause was victorious in an earlier generation, then they will struggle against the just cause. They will struggle for the sake of struggle. They will struggle, in other words, out of a certain boredom, for they cannot imagine living in a world without struggle. And if the greater part of the world in which they live is characterized by peaceful and prosperous liberal democracy, then they will struggle against that peace and prosperity and against democracy. This, I think, is the driving psychology and the driving cognitive dissonance behind the last 10 to 20 years of American politics. Simply put, we won. No country has ever been as powerful as the United States was in 1991. That was the peak of any nation's power in all of human existence. Forget triumphing over nature. We triumphed over ourselves. There was no one who could challenge us. Iraq, the fourth largest military in the world, tried, and we defeated them in 2 months. Decisively, with almost no casualties to ourselves. We were the masters of the world. And then, 9/11, Iraq, the prolonged war in Afghanistan, and in Iraq again. Those we could have recovered from, and we mostly did. Then Trump won. Okay, we voted him out. It's okay. We got a sane person in office again. It was a fluke. It won't happen again. And then it happened again. And it's happening right now. We are dismantling the most powerful economy that the world has ever seen. The greatest military and geopolitical power the world has ever seen out of boredom. It's really easy to get deeply angry at the average person for that. Forget military and economic power. Our civil liberties are being dismantled because we're too goddamn rich and we're bored and we want to fight something. And because we can't fight anyone else because we won, we fight ourselves and our own victory. However, I don't think that's very productive. Human nature compels us to fight because in nature, in a state of nature, we were fighting all the time for our basic physiological needs. Our food, our water, our physical safety. That is what we, like every other animal species on the planet, are hardwired to do. And I guess something in our psychology taught us to enjoy the struggle. Because, I guess it makes sense. If you have to struggle, you might as well enjoy it. The myth of Sisyphus. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. That's us. Humans will always want to fight. Humans will always want to struggle. Humans will always want an enemy, a challenge, an obstacle to overcome. I don't really know what that challenge, that enemy, that obstacle can be. I don't know what it should be. I guess in the long run, colonizing other planets is a pretty great challenge that would certainly provide that conflict for anyone who wants it. And even for those who aren't directly involved, entire economies would have to be rebuilt around supporting that. So that's a life mission to dedicate ourselves to for a while. But ultimately what we're struggling against is our psychology. And this is what I want to make that video about. We are fighting against ourselves. And I don't mean against each other. I mean ourselves. Each individual person. And then you magnify that to the degree of various social units, from families to neighborhoods to cities to states and to the entire national society. We are fighting against ourselves. We are fighting against our own victory because we're bored. But there's a reason I'm talking about all this, and there's a reason I decided to take that one comment from like an hour ago and harp on it for this long. Something happened over this weekend on April 5th, which was this past Saturday. Let me mark the time. It is 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Yeah. There we go. Sorry, I gotta mark the time for later. Anyway, on April 5th, on Saturday, this weekend, there was a protest all over the country in practically every major city, organized by the organizations 5051, which is 50 states, 50 protests one day, I think is what it stands for, and Hands Off, which is a less scrupulous organization, but that for the moment I am willing to ally with. They organized protests in basically every major city in the US, against Trump's assault on Medicare, on Social Security, and his general overreach of power. And I want to show you some of these pictures. This was on Saturday. I don't know which cities these are. This one is Chicago, because I know the flag. And this one is not San Diego, my home. It is not Seattle, or Portland, or Denver. This is Salt Lake City, Utah. Utah, a state that voted for Trump by, lordy, I don't even know, 60+%. Or actually just under 60%, 59.39%. And this is Salt Lake City the other day. My own hometown of San Diego saw massive crowds in our downtown. This is what we had. 12,000 protesters. People have been asking, me in particular, where are all the protesters? What's happening? Why isn't anybody doing anything? Here's the thing. They are. They have been. From the start. Took a while to really get going, but it's going. It's here. I said before that people want to fight, that people want a challenge, a struggle. Well, here's your struggle. It won't last very long, hopefully. It won't, hopefully, need to last very long. Because hopefully we can win in 4 years. But from there, I'm hoping dearly, we can use that to regain our national sense of purpose. Because we have always been at the forefront of promoting liberty and democracy and equal rights and justice around the world. The world is not a free place. The United States, formerly, was. We have to take our own country back. But aside from Europe, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, a couple countries in Asia, a couple countries in South America, a couple countries in Africa, and like 2 countries in the Middle East, there are very few free places in the world. The majority of the human population lives under dictatorships or at best corrupt oligarchies that care nothing for their rights or their liberty or their prosperity. We don't need to be invading other countries and forcibly changing their governments. We've seen how badly that goes. But we can fight for those things. We have a national mission. We failed at that mission at the ballot box in November. We can pick up the mantle again, and we can turn this around. See, I've seen a lot of people comparing what we're going through now to Germany in 1933. And you know, it's an accurate comparison in a lot of ways. But for one, the people despise this government and they want to fight. Trump was not elected to deport millions of people. He was not elected to put tariffs on everyone. I know that's what he said during his campaign, but our media is criminally incompetent and has failed to show the American people that that was his agenda. They sane-washed him. Partly for their own selfish ends, partly because they were afraid of him, and partly because of this ridiculous idea that journalists always have to present both sides as though they're equally valid. But people are beginning to wake up and realize what actually is happening, who we have put in office. They want to fight, and we should help them. We, meaning all of us. So me, this is my contribution. I want to do more. I'm trying to do more. For now, this is the best I've got. But all of us can do something or other. In 1933, there were, of course, people opposing Hitler. Communists, Social Democrats, the center. But they could not find a united front. And aside from the communists, none of them were really willing to be... I struggle to say militant, because I don't necessarily believe in militancy. But at the very least, active and outspoken and unified in their opposition to him. He was just another politician. And there was very little resistance to his taking absolute power. That is not the case here. We are not Germany. Our institutions won't save us, and there are no guardrails protecting our democracy, but there are the people, and our people do have a very strongly ingrained sense of personal liberty that can and should be leveraged in order to mount this resistance to the president, to his cronies, to his regime. That is the message I want to end this on. I always try to end these live streams on a more hopeful message. So here's the hopeful message for today. People hate this shit. People are tired of this shit. And people really can't stand any more of it. We have to go out there and join their voices. And galvanize our own friends and family to do the same. And that's up to each and every one of us. If there's a protest in your town, go. Attend. And if you're afraid of the government, or the police cracking down, wear a mask. Even a full face mask, I don't care. But go and make it known that this will not stand. That is my final message. As for if I've been protesting, there was a protest in a neighborhood fairly near me on Saturday. If it was not the exact same day that I finished a particular video that's been in the works for 2 years, I would have. In my case, I made the reasoned decision, I hope reasoned at least, decision, that publishing a video which openly repudiates fascism and authoritarianism and advocates the cause of liberty and democracy, which hundreds of thousands or hopefully millions of people can see, will probably be more effective than my one body at a protest. My protest is with my words, and this is something I'm going to talk about in a video that I want to publish pretty soon, another State of the Channel address. But, as I see it, we all have talents and we all have abilities. Mine, unfortunately, is politics and speaking. So I want to get a lot more involved in that front. But yes, the next time there's a protest on a less important day in my life, I absolutely intend to show up and to bring something. That was the other reason I didn't go. I had nothing to bring. No sign, no flag, no nothing. I gotta create a sign or buy like a Ukraine flag or something. But yes, I lodge my own protest every day when I wake up and live through this nonsense and try to enjoy my life. And that's the bare minimum we can all do. If you can't protest, if you can't speak out, if you can't vote, just live. The Jews have been protesting their oppression for centuries that way, and that's a lesson I learned pretty young. In absence of anything else, just live. It's not the most effective protest, but it's something. And it's a repudiation of the idea that our lives do not belong to us. I hear that Wilson is back, so I want him to say something now.
I was waiting for a thing. My lamentations to the porcelain throne have been given and received, although I am a scarred and wounded warrior of the intervention at Betharumus. But all jokes aside, I had a conversation with my grandfather today, and it's a conversation that I'd like all of you to have been flies on the wall on. Where, for the first time in a long time, we were able to talk about the banality of evil. And how, though these atrocities were occurring before our very eyes, the champions of this cause were no different than us. They were grandfathers, grandmothers, sons, daughters, cousins, uncles. They were people with kids. They were perhaps some of the nicest people that you would ever meet. People who you would love to do nothing more than to shake hands with and break bread with. But these people do not realize that they are in a cult. And the only thing that you can do is, for you cannot change their minds. All you can do is be resolute in your beliefs. Do not bend, do not break, do not compromise them. For democracy, for liberty, are valuable things. They are wondrous ideas. They are things that can hold up to scrutiny. They require no rebuttal. They require no robust argument, for they are, on the face of it, wise. They are illustrious. They are immortal ideas. They are things that do not require fanaticism to exist. So, therefore, I implore all of you to remain resolute. I've said it several times in previous streams. I've said, don't give up the ship. And I implore everyone else to be doing the same. I am not necessarily at this point asking you to engage to try and break people out of cult mentality. If you believe that you can, I encourage you, but take a lesson, take a word from that wondrous of old channels, such as counter arguments or counter arguments or other things. Do not approach the conversation by signaling to people that you have the intent to change their mind. It will raise the shields of their mental fortifications, and you will be in for quite a fight. So insist upon that you are not. And though that may seem insidious to some of you, I promise you that is not. For again, liberalism and democracy are virtuous and nourishing ideas. They require no defense. They can withstand any barrage and any scrutiny. They are ideas that are inherently valuable. They provide succor to the soul that is greater than any short-term boost to a wounded ego, like that of the wounded pride of a white male who is being told by some has-been WrestleMania announcer that they know all the problems, and that if you just listen to this one guy, he'll fix everything. Authority is brittle. Everyone on the right believes that they can just give all of their... Whereas money and corruptions are as corrosive as the most strong acid that you can think of. They will eat away at the flesh and soul of a person greater than any base substance or basic substance. They are inherently both contagious and caustic. But I have the faith that if we remain resolute and we continue to live as the Jews have done for as long as they have done, this small, brief blimp in the history of our great nation will come to pass with lessons learned. That American democracy has not come to an end. That freedom once again nourishes the soul of the nation. That you can find succor in liberty. And that democracy is the greatest of all balms to wound or to soothe any wound and to heal any injury. ladies and gentlemen, if my illustrious co-host has nothing further for you, thank you for your time.
And now that President Lincoln has concluded his speech, I will also conclude this live stream. Thank you all
Indeed
for joining and listening to our ramblings and confused frustration. We will be back in, I'm not entirely sure when. Next one is scheduled for April 22nd, but that might be the first one in a long time, in ever so far actually, that we will have to move, possibly by a day back or a week forward, because I think I'm going to be in Arizona on that day. But I will keep you updated.
You lucky bastard.
For those updates, come join my Discord server, which is linked in the description to this live stream and all over my channel, including the channel description. If you are inclined, you can also go and support me over on Patreon for as little as $2.50 a month. And if you want more of my ramblings, you can go to my Twitter. I wouldn't recommend it, but you can. Until then, thank you all for coming. Thank you all for listening. We will see you in 2 to 3 weeks to discuss, I think, Trump's first 100 days and an overview of the situation that we find ourselves in. Till then,
let us hope and pray that we are not under martial law by then. Until then, ladies and gentlemen, that's all that we have for you. Good night. Good luck. God bless America.
Wow,
I guess,
okay,
I don't
Mr.
know.
President.
We still need a Walter Cronkite-esque way to sign off the show.
And that's how it is.
And that's how it is.
All right, folks. I'll see
you
next time.
And that's the way it is.
And that's the way it is. And I'll see you next time.
Good night, everybody.